Hi, I'm Natalie Jill, fat loss expert turned high performance coach. When odds are stacked against us, how do we shift and create everything from nothing? How do we level up when we aren't feeling it yet or we've had a big setback? On this podcast, I'll be talking to some of the most inspiring and courageous men and women on this planet who, at their worst, learned how to achieve success greater than they ever dreamed possible, leveling up and creating everything from nothing. Cynthia Garcia grew up extremely poor. Now, when I say extremely poor, she had no running water, she had no indoor plumbing. And to make matters worse, she was in a very abusive family, being abused from the age of 5 on. She was super poor, abused, and felt no love. And Cynthia didn't believe she really had anything working for her except for one thing. And that one thing, as she calls it, she was given a great earth suit. What does that mean? She was beautiful, physically beautiful, and she viewed that as a gift. So she moved to LA and she worked as a model in the ever competitive entertainment industry. And she was quickly broken down again. Constant feedback about her looks, too skinny, too overweight, whatever. The Los Angeles competitive pressure and the crazy hectic work environment, it was wreaking havoc on her stress level and her health. She was stressed out. Her skin was reflecting it. She was sick. She was depressed. She felt like she had no real friends. And then that moment happened. She was in the shower and she found some very scary lumps in her breast. Now, she was ready to end it all. She was broke, depressed, suicidal, no one to talk to. And then she finally surrendered. And that's when it all started to turn around. Today, join in as Cynthia Garcia, who now today is a celebrity nutritionist, transformation expert, best-selling author, in-demand speaker, TV and media personality, and philanthropist. She's also the founder and CEO of the Institute of Transformational Nutrition, a company that makes it easy for health coaches to do the work they love by teaching them a proven coaching process that leaves them confident and credible so they can be a powerful force in the world. Join in today and learn exactly how Cynthia Garcia went from those total rags to riches in every meaning of that word. I am so excited. Today I'm talking to Cynthia Garcia, and she's got quite the stories. She's the perfect guest for Leveling Up today. She has created an 8-figure business. She is the founder of the Institute of Transformational Nutrition, which we'll get into. But she's got a crazy story that got her here. And a mutual friend of ours introduced us, and I was dying to interview her. All she told me was she was suicidal, broke, living in a crappy apartment in Hollywood. And she went literally from that to creating an 8-figure biz. And I had to know, who is this woman that did this? And how did she go from there to this? So thank you so much for being on, Cynthia. I can't wait to chat with you.
Yeah, it's such a pleasure to be here, Natalie. And honestly, with that introduction, we can only go up, right? So
yeah. So I'm dying to know, because I can Google you and you have credentials out the wazoo. You people know who you are. You've got this fantastic business model that you've created. I know that you're co-founder of Unicorns. You've got a lot of things happening, and you're extremely attractive. You look like you have it all put together. So who were you before all of that, and how did this happen?
Wow. So I guess the short and long of it is right before I decided to go into health, which I had no interest in, by the way. Like, you just exemplify health and are such a great spokesperson for that. But I had no interest. I didn't know the difference between a protein and a carb. And I honestly didn't care. It wasn't something I was interested in until I had my own health struggle, which I think is so many people's story, right? So yes, as our mutual friend said, I was living in this little tiny studio apartment in Hollywood, California. I was working at the time in the entertainment industry, just hustling, trying to make it work. And I had got really sick. Like most people, I was out there pounding the pavement day in and day out, working all day, going to events and parties at night, trying to get my foot in the door. And all of that caught up with me really, really quickly. So I was about 35 pounds or 30 pounds overweight. I had cystic acne on my face, my neck, my back, just wouldn't go away. Cellulite in places I didn't know you could get it. But even more concerning, I was exhausted from morning to night. I was diagnosed with chronic fatigue syndrome and was suffering from short-term memory loss. And I tried everything. I used to hear people say that and think, if you tried everything, surely something would have worked. So did you really? But the truth is I did. I went to doctors, trainers, nutritionists. I was hypnotized. I did energy balancing. I popped the pills, drank the shakes, and nothing worked. And so the morning I got up and hopped in the shower and found lumps in both of my breasts, that was my breaking.
Wow. Now, how old were you when this was happening?
I was in my early 20s.
Okay, early 20s. Wow. And
Yeah.
so you were in the entertainment industry. Like, what were you doing in that, and what was so stressful about it?
So I was a television host and I was modeling. And the stressful part was really, it's a tough industry to be in. It's interesting, Natalie, I remember this day. I'll never forget this. I went to One Go See, which is where, you try to book a modeling job. And they said, oh, we love your look. You'd be fabulous if only you were 5 pounds thinner. I went to another one. I'm not even joking. It was a little bit more than an hour later. And they said, oh, love your look. You'd be great if you were just 5 pounds heavier. Swear to God. Yeah. I was just like, this is crazy. So you're always hustling. It's a very cutthroat industry. And just, there's people vying for those spots every day. So it's tough.
Yeah. And it's just comparison mode, I'm sure, around the clock. And that's stressful in itself, just feeling you have to look a certain way or be a certain way. And you almost had to be a chameleon in that. Like, who do I need to show up and be for this person? You're not really yourself, I'm assuming.
No. I think, I think most of us in general lose touch with who we are because we try to become who others want us to be.
Yeah.
But I've never found that to be more true than in this industry or in that industry. I'm no longer in it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was tough.
So when you say you tried everything, and you weren't really interested in health, did you consider that you were eating healthy? Did you think you were doing that at the time?
Totally. And I was eating, all the greens and, drinking the green smoothies, staying away from a lot of fruit, no processed sugar, no processed junk food.
Following the rules.
Following all the rules. Yeah. And I thought, well, this should fix it. And then it didn't. So I thought, okay, well, maybe I need to see someone. And that's when I sought out a nutritionist who said, nope, you're doing the right thing. So I thought, oh, it's my workouts. I'm just not doing the right things working out. I'm doing too much, too little. And my nutritionist at the time said, maybe you're working out too much. And luckily she was a friend of a friend, so I could afford to see her. But I was spending every dime I had trying to fix my body. And then the trainer didn't help anything. I was just more tired than I was when I started. And nothing worked. There were things that I would feel better for a few days or have a bit more energy, but then it would just cycle back to the way it was before. So
you obviously had something underlying going on, and obviously you were stressed. You just didn't know that the stress was a big part of that. So you find these lumps and then what happens?
I'm sorry?
You find the lumps and then what happens when you're in the shower?
So that was, as I said, that was the breaking point. I remember I was in the shower and I just sank to the floor. I sat down in the tub and put my arms around myself. And I remember just sitting there and just rocking, just like rock a baby. And I don't know how long I sat there. I was just done. I was so broken in that moment. And the next thing I remember was I was shivering because the water had gotten cold. And so I get out and I wrap myself in a towel and I just sat on my couch and I just sat there all day. And that led to the wee hours of the night. And I remember just being a zombie. And I've never felt so hopeless and so worthless in all my life. And there were a lot of those times, and we can talk about those if you want, but this was it. And so I somehow found myself in the corner of this little tiny studio apartment with the light from, the street lights coming in my one window. I had one window. And I decided that I was done. I had a handful of pills and a Diet Dr. Pepper, which was my only indulgence at that time. And just decided that this was my way out. And I thought, they can't say that I didn't try. They'll find the things, they'll see the money I've spent. I had no money left in my bank account, basically, in a city where I had no real friends, no family members at all, and no real prospects. I wasn't working because, of what I looked like. Yeah. So I kept losing all these jobs. And I really felt like this was the end for me. And so
did it occur when you had these lumps? So did you automatically assume, okay, this is breast cancer? Were you like, I just don't even know what this is? What was going through your mind? And clearly you must have been depressed before that's even happening. But what was like the conversation you were having in your head?
So I've dealt with depression and anxiety my entire life. I've been diagnosed with clinical depression at a really young age. And obviously the state of my health and my financial situation, the fact that I had no support system at all certainly didn't help that. I had no idea what the lumps were. I'd heard stories and read the books, but I didn't know. And to be quite honest, I didn't care. I just thought, fuck it. That was it. I've never, and it's not even that I was sad or upset. I was just numb, just 100% numb and completely defeated.
So you didn't know if it was you didn't go to like, it's breast cancer. You just took it more like a sign, like it's just one more thing.
Yeah. One more thing. And worst case, it's breast cancer, but who knows? But I just cannot continue to live my life this way because, I just felt like I had been fighting my entire life and I was just so sick of fighting.
Yeah,
I mean,
I get
my
that.
childhood had been an uphill battle. Everything I had tried to do was tough and hard. And I was just done.
So was that a pattern you sort of learned in your childhood that everything was tied? Because I believe that we form our beliefs from our childhood. Like if we think life is tough and hard, we typically got that from childhood. Was that your experience?
It was because things were tough and hard. It was difficult. And I felt like it was so hard to overcome the things that I had been kind of served up throughout my childhood, but I had done it. I'm very much a survivor. And I think there's a lot to be said for that. There's a lot of things that I've brought with me into my current career because of the challenges I went through. So, looking back, I wouldn't trade that. But it definitely wasn't easy.
Yeah. So when you said you were as a child, and I want to come back to this moment where you were at the pills, you didn't want to live, but when you were a child and you were diagnosed with depression, what happened then? Were you put on pills? Were you told to manage it? Like how was that treated when you were diagnosed then?
Yeah. So we were very poor. Like I grew up in extreme poverty. There was no running water in our home. We had an outhouse that we used and a bucket in the corner.
Wow.
Where we went
it was extreme poverty. It's not like what we typically see in this country. Yes.
No, it wasn't like, oh, we were poor, but we knew we had love.
Yeah, you really didn't have a bathroom or indoor plumbing or water.
No. And to go into our kitchen, we had to go outside. There was no heat in our house. We had an old wood stove in one of the bedrooms that we burned wood and coal when we could afford it. And that, the heat would sort of dissipate into the other rooms. But yeah, I remember night after night going hungry. My dad would steal food because we didn't have the money to buy it and we had nothing to eat. I mean, we would have gone hungry way more often had he not done that.
So, and what was the conversation from your parents at that time? Would they tell you you're going to amount to something? What were they telling you that you wouldn't amount to something? Like, what did they believe about you, or what did you believe that they believed about you?
So it was a very volatile household. My parents fought all the time. And when I say they fought, I don't mean that they had arguments or disagreements. I meant they literally tried to murder each other on a daily basis. I never knew what I was going to wake up to. I never knew what I was going to come home to. I was constantly anxious, just walking on eggshells, waiting for the ball to drop. So it was pretty extreme. And, they had their backgrounds and their upbringing wasn't exactly ideal. It was very traumatic as well. So I believe that they were doing the best they could with what they had, but they had no idea how to be parents. So in terms of motivating me and encouraging me and saying, hey, I know it's bad, but it's going to get better. You can make something of yourself. It just wasn't an option. I mean, no one left this town. No one got any better. Everyone got government checks and that was it.
So it's starting to make sense to then why you come to LA with these dreams, like I'm going to be in the entertainment business, I'm going to be this. And when there's the setbacks happening, you had no proof of being able to break through of that before, because how you were raised was like, that was like your chance of success and it wasn't working right now is what I'm imagining.
Yeah. I mean, and there was time after time of that happening. I mean, I remember I was always an entrepreneur from a really young age. This is a really funny, quick story, but I remember when I was, I don't know, maybe 7, I decided that I was going to start a printing press. It's a true story. Because somehow I actually know where I got this book. It was a little book that I got on like businesses kids could start. And they had the lemonade stand and that sort of thing. And another fun fact, I actually got it from the trash dumpsters, which were just like right across the way from our house. That was sort of our treasure trove. We would literally dig in these trash cans to try to find toys, something like, a book that we could read or anything.
Sure.
And so I had this little book, and the idea was that you carve letters out of potatoes and you dip them in a stamp pad, not that I had one, and you can print things.
Okay.
Well, I decided I would make a town newsletter, and this was going to be amazing because potatoes, I was like, I could find a potato, right?
Yeah.
I don't know what I'm going to use for ink, but I'll deal with that when I get there, much like we entrepreneurs do,
Sure. Yeah.
get there. And so I ended up carving out one letter, and it was a complete disaster. And that was the end of my first business. But no, I mean, I never saw anyone being successful. And actually my family, my aunts and uncles would say to me, you're nothing, you're nobody, you'll never amount to nothing. You're useless. And everything that I was surrounded by only reflected that, the state that I was in. I was physically, mentally, emotionally abused. I was sexually abused starting at the age of 5. And then I continued. So yeah, I mean, there was no, setting yourself up for success.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So how do you, that's a lot. That's a heavy amount. Did you have siblings too with this?
I did. I have a younger sister who's 4 years younger.
So I'm assuming you were almost mothering her through all of that same experience too.
I wasn't. No, you would think. There was so much pain in my home, and which contributed to just anger. Everyone was angry all the time. My parents were always angry. We were always angry. My sister and I fought all the time because that's what we learned from our parents. That's what we saw. There was no hugging. There was no loving gesture. Yeah. None of that ever took place. So I didn't know what it looked like to mother anyone because I had never had that example. And my parents, they have a troubled background, and we can talk about that if you want. But one of the things that I think really contributed to this pain that they were going through is they had a son before me who had died in an accident when he was just 2.
Oh, wow.
And I think that was, obviously really, really tough for them.
Sure.
My mother's family, her dad had died when she was, I think, 6 or 7. And her mother was an alcoholic and, sold herself for money, and they were homeless, and the kids would live in the car while she was in wherever with the man. And so she didn't have family close. And when their son died, my dad's mother essentially blamed them.
Wow.
And she was afraid the same thing would happen to me when I came along. So I actually spent a lot of time, basically lived with my grandmother for maybe the first 5 years of my life after I was, weaned from nursing with my mother.
Wow.
So it was there weren't any examples of being great parents or loving or, helping you get through the hard times or encouraging.
Totally.
It didn't exist.
It's so amazing as I'm talking to you here, and I can't wait to get into like where it pivoted after that moment of wanting to take those pills and all of that. But what's so interesting is I've interviewed so many people, and before I even started interviewing people, I've always been curious in people's stories and what makes them up. And it's what's really interesting, and it's confusing as a parent what to do, because if you are the parent that believes in your child, gives them love, thrive, take care of them, give them all the things, they're not the ones that end up so successful. But you take the more broken a child, it's bizarre. It's like, and then the broken children go one of two directions. Like either they stay broken or they thrive and create these massive results. And and as a parent myself, I look at my daughter and I'm thinking, okay, my daughter has 4 parents. So she's got me and her dad, and then we're both remarried. So she's got 4 loving parents. My daughter has more love than she knows what to do with. And I worry about it. I'm like, do we believe in her too much? It's like, will she have that entrepreneurial spirit, or will she? So it's just, as I'm listening to you, I'm like, this isn't uncommon where I'm talking with people that have had these horrible childhoods where they didn't have the love or the belief system. And then it's just amazing to me that it turns around from that.
It's so interesting. I agree with you. It's funny because the next book that I'm writing is about this topic. How do you turn your adversity into your
Yeah.
advantages? How do you really leverage these painful, trying childhoods and learn from them and leverage that into success? And while I was doing some research for the book, I actually found this statistic that 7 out of 10 entrepreneurs who make 7 figures or above experience some form of extreme childhood adversity.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, I
It's
was
so
just like,
crazy. Like, because
wow.
you think as a parent, what do you do? Like,
I
what,
know.
give my daughter adversity so she could thrive? Like, it doesn't, it's just unbelievable. Okay. So let's go back to this moment in Los Angeles. You're in your apartment, you find the lumps, you've got the pills, you've been depressed, you're not leaving your apartment right now. What happens then?
Yeah, so like I said, I had really sat through the whole night. I mean, I was just all day sitting there into the night. I got the pills. I remember just emptying them all into my hand. I came back, I sat down, I had the drink,
Are
and
these
I
like
was
sleeping pills or what were you going to take?
so it was a mixture. There was a bunch of sleeping pills, mostly because they kept saying, "Oh, if you sleep, we'll restore your
Yes.
advantage. You'll be."
Got it.
So there was that. So I was just ready, and I remember sitting there and I was fine with it. I was feeling very numb. But then I started just looking back over my life and I started thinking about my childhood. And because I thought, how did I get here?
Yeah.
Like how did this really happen? And the more I sat there and the more all these things just kind of replayed in my mind, I thought, why? Like, why has this happened to me? Like, why is it just time after time after time? I mean, there's so many things we haven't even talked about yet. My parents literally trying to murder each other. My grandfather murdered his wife and then committed suicide on my
Oh
sweet
my gosh.
birthday. I mean, there's
Oh,
so
wow.
many things I could go on and on and on. And so I'm replaying this and I'm just thinking, why me? Like
Yeah.
what, you know?
Yeah.
Is going on. And I started to get really angry in that moment, Natalie. And I just thought, I mean, the tears are just streaming and I am just broken wide open. And I'm just saying, why me? Why me? Why? And it was just this voice that I heard. And I don't, call it a divine download or a word of God. I don't know. But it was just this voice that said, it hasn't happened to you. It happened for you. And it's funny because I
Did
hear
that
people say that all the time now, but I'd never heard that. I had no idea. I was
really?
like, well, that doesn't, no. I never heard. I had no idea. I wasn't spiritual. I didn't read any
Yeah.
personal development. I didn't know any of that. So I thought, well, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Like, what if it's happening for me, then what is it all for? Like, for the love of, little naked baby,
Sure.
tell me already.
Cynthia, how did you even, so I'm just trying to understand, I want to do this because especially people listening that might be in that spot right now. And I want
Yeah.
to understand this more. So yeah, when somebody is in that spot and they reach out for help, whether it's through religion, to me, it's surrender. Like when you actually surrender and they're like, I'm
That's
at the
right.
bottom. I don't know what to
That's
do.
right.
I'm
That's
here.
right.
Help me. Then you could go a lot of different directions. It can be either religion, which a lot of people find that's what we spoke before we started recording about a podcast. Yeah, you would listen to a mine where his was religion.
Mhm.
It can be through a therapist, an amazing therapist. It could be through personal development work, lots of different sources. But are you saying, so like there was really no source? You just were in this spot and this just came to you, sort of, this idea came to you?
Yeah, I mean, it's clearly, and it's interesting because I, suffering from short-term memory, I couldn't remember anything. Everything was jumbled. I had crazy brain fog,
Sure.
nothing was clear. But that night, it really was about surrendering because there was nothing else to do,
Hmm.
Natalie. I mean, I had tried, I had fought, I had put in the work, I had spent the money, nothing was working. So I just was like, I'm done.
Yes.
And that openness, that surrendering, that just breaking open,
Yeah.
that's when I mean, it was a voice as if it would have spoken to me. I mean, I didn't
Yes.
hear it out loud in the room. I heard it internally and it just said, it hasn't happened. Because I kept saying, why has this happened to me? Why is
Yeah.
everything happening to me? And it was like, oh, it hasn't happened to you. It's happened for you.
Yeah.
Which again was just super, just mind boggling. And so my question was, well, then what is it for? And the next thing I heard was, so you could do something great.
Oh,
Now,
so I
look.
just got chills, Cynthia, because every time I'm like, this is the theme with everyone. And it's that point of surrender that's the turnaround. And I want people to know that surrender does not mean you give up or you're weak. Surrender means you're
Right.
there, like you are
It's the
asking
hardest.
for help.
It's the hardest. I fought it for so long. It wasn't until my physical condition and coupled with just my terrible mental health and my
Yeah.
depression just brought me to my knees. Because like I said, I'm a fighter. I mean, I have fought tooth and nail, to get everything that I'd ever got in my life. And so surrendering felt weak. It felt like giving up. It felt like I was just, I mean, it contributed to my feeling of worthlessness. But when you're so broken and you get
Yep.
to that point, you just don't care anymore. There is no caring. There's no feeling. You're just empty.
And the other side of surrender is so amazing. Like when people get there. So what my fear for people is they stay in that control, never getting to surrender. And then they start with the drugs or whatever else it is to cover up and soothe. And then they never get to that point. And I want people to know that it's the feeling, the feels. It's going through that to that place is where there's something amazing on the other side. But if we stay masking it with drugs or alcohol or or even just sleep sometimes, if we stay masking it, we're in workaholic. We never get to that point.
Yeah. I mean, truer words have never been spoken. Just preach, Natalie, because it's so true. And it's interesting, I'm a big control freak and I always have been, because for me, control meant safety. If I could control what was going on in my home, then things wouldn't get just batshit crazy and I wouldn't be afraid for my life. So control was very much safety. And it's funny, flash forward years and years later, this was just a few years ago, I was at a retreat with Gary Zukov, who's such an amazing
I love
leader. Oh, he has my heart. And I was talking to him about this and, I said to him, I like to be in control. And he said, why? And I said, it's safety. And he said, no, it's fear.
So good.
Right. He was so right. It was 100% fear because I had done the control. I had done the numbing with the drugs and the alcohol and the meaningless relationships and all of the things. And it didn't work. So, but control, that was my lifeline.
So I have a theory too around this. And I don't know if you put this together too, but you guys can't see Cynthia right now, but she's like drop dead gorgeous. Like there's no joke. Of course she was a model. But what's interesting is what forced you into surrender was when the one card you were dealt that was in your favor, the way that you look, was challenged now. And that's what's so interesting because you went to, which I've done too, why me? Why is this one more thing? But I believe it was to force you to the spot of surrender because nothing else was going to get to you until your one card was now not your card.
That's right. 100%. And look, it's dumb luck, right? That I ended up in this earth suit and you got in that one. And, I see your little doggy, you got in that one. Like, it's just random that our souls end up in these earth suits. But yeah, you're right. It was the one thing I had. And when I realized, because, and I was getting my education, I'd always worked to kind of pay my way through school, but certainly wasn't, finished and had a long way to go. But yeah, you're right. It was the one thing that I thought, okay, if I can leverage this, then I can make some money and then I can build a life for myself. Yes. And when that was taken away, I was just like, wow.
Totally got it.
Nothing.
Yeah. And I think everybody, it could get to that point. It might not be that for somebody else, but when that final thing that you had, that's what forces. So I fully believe that things happen for us. So you had this epiphany and you had this awareness. Did it flip like that, or what was the process after that awareness?
So it took a moment. It wasn't just immediate because I was in a really bad place. But, did I want to die? No. I mean, yes and no. If there was a shred of hope, of course not, of course not. And this wasn't my first time considering this option. I had been in this place before, but never quite to this darkness, this level of darkness. But when I heard, because you're meant to do something great, I thought, well, that's a little, it was a pattern interrupt. Do you know what I mean? Because I'm sitting here and I'm wallowing in this horrible situation that I find myself in. And then to hear like, oh, you're meant for greatness. And hearing all the while growing up that you're worthless, you're hopeless, you're stupid, you're ugly, you're a horrible person, you'll never amount to anything. For this moment, for that to be the message that I heard, it just jarred me out of this situation I was in and this mindset that I was in. And I just essentially was like, tell me more.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
just thought about this and I realized, what was happening was that I was meant to go through these journeys. I was meant to go through the hard times, the few ups, the lots of downs. And even in that moment, even my health was meant to struggle for a reason. And I
Yes.
thought, well, maybe if I could figure that out, maybe that's the key to this great thing that I'm supposed to do. If I can figure this out, and then I can help others to not be in this horrible position. If I could do that, what if I could overcome all of this and just show people what's possible? Maybe that's where the great thing would be. Because if I could show them that I could do it, then wow,
That's amazing. I love
anyone could
that
do it.
because I do believe that, and people get triggered when I say this. I know I'm going to trigger people right now, but I'm so believe this, that when we think we're chronically fatigued, when we think don't have motivation, when we think we don't have energy, it's not that those things are facts. What those things are is that we don't have a passion or a purpose. Because when you have passion and purpose, there is no fatigue. There is no foggy head. We're clear. The energy's there. So to me, that's what's so cool is I feel like sometimes we think it's the problem holding us back from our dreams, but it's that we don't have our passion or purpose yet.
That's right. I mean, it's ourselves holding us back from living that dream and from doing the things that we really want to do. And I meet people every day that say, Cynthia, I'm just stuck. If I could just walk out the door and start a new life tomorrow, I would. And my question is always, well, then why don't you? Because you can. You can. You can totally do that. And I'm with you. And it's funny. I didn't purpose. I know what that is. I didn't have a purpose. That was then. Yeah. No idea. No. And so I didn't realize it in that moment, but you're 100% right. That's what it was.
Yeah.
Because what happened was I thought, okay, well, I essentially ended up making a pact with God, the universe, whatever you want to call it. And I said, all right, I'll give this one more shot because I think there's something here. So if you'll open the doors, I'll walk through them.
Total surrender. I love it. That's why
there was no other option, right? Like I fought as hard as I could fight. Yeah. I know there's actually I told you before we started talking, there's a picture on my wall that says surrender, and it's a woman holding a baby. And that was another one of my big times of surrender was when I had my daughter. So it's a lifelong lesson that, we learn over and over, but it definitely got to that point. And I thought, okay, well, if I'm agreeing to do this, let's do it. Because again, I'm a survivor, I'm a fighter, let's go. So I got up and I went to my computer, and this was back in the day, right? So I pulled up Google and I searched on nutrition program, like get a nutrition education. I had no idea. And I found a program. I enrolled the next day. I put it on 3 credit cards because I didn't have enough of a limit on one of them to pay for it. It was all the money I had, but that was okay because I knew that I was investing in the only thing I had left to invest in. And that was me. Right. And now I really think like from Warren Buffett, who's like, the best investment you can make is investing in yourself. I didn't know who he was at the time, but it's true. I believe that to this day. I believe it. And that started me on this journey of healing my own body, working with clients, understanding that we are fed by so much more than what's on our plate. And because I had gone through so much of my own mental health issues, I thought psychology, like the psychological components of how do you heal trauma? How do you get through these adversities? How do you really turn it all around and leverage those things? That was critical. So I started studying that. And then just like you said, my purpose started coming through, right? I started
so amazing.
And connecting spiritually. And I thought, we are so disconnected from who we are. Like, forget your purpose. We don't even know who we are every day, and we want to be fed by others. And that it doesn't work. All we have is these empty voids that are left inside of us that are unfulfilled. And that's why we do things like overeat or drink too much or have meaningless relationships or gamble or shop or a million other things. So I pulled all of these components together and I called it Transformational Nutrition.
I love that.
Because it was a certification program that quite literally saved my life, that's what I wanted to use to pay it forward for others. And so that's when I founded the Institute of Transformational Nutrition.
So awesome. I have so many questions about that, but here's what I want to share too, which is so cool. I just wrote down several words that you said. And it's funny because I just started my aging in reverse community. I feel that that's my purpose now, but the main themes of it, check this out: connection, getting over people pleasing, fear of judgment, finding your passion and purpose, all those things, because everything you just mentioned is that's in anything. I think those are so critical.
Totally.
And I think what stops us so many times are like, what's somebody else going to think, or someone's going to be unhappy with me, or we stay in our own heads, not connected. We become these like hidden introverts. And then that's the opposite of healing right there, to not be connecting and be in tribe and be with other people.
100%. And that connection is so critical, by the way. So when I say spirituality at ITN, that's what we teach. So I'm not talking about religion here, although you could choose that if you want. Spirituality is about relationships. It's about connection. It's about the relationship you have with yourself, your relationship with others, your relationship with the planet, with something higher than you, your divine purpose. It's that. And we are so disconnected these days. You know, we hide behind computers and screens and we don't have that intimate relationship that we once had. And that's a deep hunger. And most of us are starving to death from it.
So when you figured this out and you started diving in, I'm assuming that your energy, your mood, everything started shifting because now you had a purpose and you were clear on your vision. How long did it take? And did things just start working in that? Or were there like up and down battles? Like what was the tactical? Was it your obsession over it? What made it work?
I definitely think having a bigger purpose, because now I was able to put the mission before the me. It wasn't about me anymore. And so for people who say like, you know, well, I want to do this, but what will they think? You know, people know me as this thing, not as this thing. Like, what will they think? And we have this fear around that. Yeah. My thing is you put the message and the mission before the me, and then that's no longer an issue, because the truth is it's not about you. You know, we like to think it is, and we all have egos. I do too, you know, and sometimes my ego gets pulled into it. And then the beginning, I was very triggered around what will people think? What will they say? You know, but there's something bigger than me. And that was the bigger mission, the bigger purpose. And so even to this day, when I get, you know, like even getting on this interview with you, anytime I do TV or anything like that, I always am just like, oh, a little nervous, like is this going to resonate? But I quickly flip that by just focusing on the mission and what needs to be done and why I know without a doubt that I'm here. So that was the big thing. But to answer your question, it didn't happen overnight. True transformation doesn't. Change can happen overnight, no doubt, but transformation doesn't. It happens over time. Okay. And so that's what I really focused on. And I didn't give up. Because like so many other people, you know, in my life, you know, especially in my early years, I would diet and then fall off the wagon 13 minutes later. You know, it's just something I think that we all tend to do. And we learned through that to not trust ourselves. So it was really about taking baby steps, like baby stepping my way to health and healing. And everything I tried didn't work. There were some things that would fail and I would take 2 steps backwards, but I learned from that. And then I would take another step forward and try something else. And so I really became a guinea pig for essentially what I teach today. It was just that trial and error, taking 3 steps forward, 2 steps back. And eventually when I coupled, you know, the physiological with the psychological and the spiritual, that's when the big change really happened, because I could tap into any one of those at any given moment to feed myself what I was really hungry for in that moment. Yeah.
I love this.
Brought me forward.
So did you ever, so here's what I want people to know about a vision too. This is interesting. It's not that people get misled with thinking they have to have all the answers of where they want to end up. I just want people to figure out like, what are they purposeful about? What are they passionate about? And what do they want to feel like, be around, be engaged with? Because I'm assuming you didn't have this vision. It was going to be this 8-figure business. You just knew your vision was you were called to this direction.
Yeah, I had no idea what it looked like. And if I could be really transparent, if I knew then what I knew now and knew everything it would take to get to this point, I wouldn't have done it. And that's just the honest truth.
Oh, I could say that about my stuff too. Yeah.
It was just, it would have been like so overwhelming. And I would have been like, I've never done that. Who am I? I'm just this small town girl with no real education. I don't know proper etiquette. I don't know anything about nutrition, but I'm going to start a school that educates tens of thousands of people all around the globe. Right. You know, there's no way I would have done it. But what you do is I have a friend named Vivian Glick, and she has a foundation called Just Like My Child.
I've interviewed her on here.
She's amazing. Has such a tremendous story, but she always talks about just taking the next right step. And
Yeah.
that's what I did. It was just the next right step, just baby stepping my way forward. And there was a lot of missteps too. Don't get me wrong. It wasn't like success isn't just a straight line up the axis. It's up and down, whether it's with a business or with your health or whatever the case might be. But for me, throughout this process too, and honestly through my childhood, because as I said, I'm writing this new book and the research that's going into it, I'm looking back to see, how did I really do this? Like, what was it that I pulled on when I had nothing to really hold to? What was it? And what I realized was that I had always set higher standards for myself. I live by this motto of higher standards. And what that means, it's not about money. It's just about moving yourself forward. And so I would look at people who did have money and I would think, how do they act? How do they speak? What do they read? What do they eat? Where do they get an education? And I would start to mimic those things. And I essentially acted as if, right? So I created this version of myself that I wanted to be, even at a young age, just because my situation was so rough and so bleak that it was a survival mechanism. And so I created this version of the me that I would want to be. And then I pulled in traits of people who were successful in doing the things and having the things that I wanted. And I began to mimic that.
Yeah.
I thought, what books do they read? I'll read those books. I read books. And in those books, I would see characters who were wealthy or living a great lifestyle or had great friends and relationships. And I would say, how did they do that? What did they say to the man to get the relationship? All of those things. And that's how I learned. Like, that was a big part of my education.
Totally.
It's something I still do today.
I do it too. The reason I started this podcast was this reason, that exact reason. Like I was going through another downturn in my business. And I was in that mindset of how do I create when I feel like this? And so I wanted to know, how do people that have massive success create? And literally that's where my podcast was born from. I'm going to interview those people.
That's amazing.
I believe that wholeheartedly. Okay. So I want to know more about, your school, because I know people are going to be interested in that. But before I get into that, I do have a couple questions that I just want to know so I know how your mind works.
Sure.
Did you get any personal help? Like, did you ever see a therapist? Did you go to any transformational workshop? Like, was all the breakthroughs through your own research? Did somebody help you? Did you hire a coach? Like, what helped you figure all this out and process?
All of the above. So I didn't have, I was broke. Remember, I didn't have any more money to do that. But I was getting an education, but all it focused on was nutrition, food, nutrients. And that's right. You need to know that.
Yeah.
But that wasn't healing me. That wasn't fixing me. And so, like you said, I didn't have the words to put to it at the time, but it was finding that bigger purpose. And so I thought, okay, there's more to this than just health. I need something to hold on to. And I had been raised in religion. Some members of my family, extended family, had gone to church and had taken me. My grandmother had taken me when I was younger. And that wasn't resonating with me at the point that I was at my life. But I thought,
you were having a bad taste watching how your family was treating you. I
mean, let's be honest.
Yeah.
So I thought, I need something, because I didn't have, the friends that I did have, quote unquote friends, went away when I didn't go out every night anymore, and when I wasn't making any money, and when I wasn't working. And so it was literally just me. So I thought, how do I get through this? I have to have a higher power. So what does that look like? And I remember I walked to the bookstore, and I walked in and I found this great book called Be Here Now by this random man named Ram Dass, who today is one of my greatest teachers. He's my ultimate teacher. But at the time I had no idea. And I took the book back and I thought, because Natalie, here was my plan. I thought, I'm going to get enlightened, because once I'm enlightened, then I don't have to worry about the spiritual stuff and the personal growth and the work. I'll just be good. And then I can focus on this whole health thing.
Totally.
That's what I thought. Little did I know that, once you start, it's a never ending process, right?
Yeah.
And then once you know, you can't unknow. So you're just kind of screwed.
That's true.
I took it back and I sat down to read it, and I couldn't understand a single word. I had no idea what this man was talking about. So I go back to the bookstore, and there was a book called You Can Heal Your Life. And I thought, well, if I need anything, it's that. And it was Louise Hay, and I took it back and I read it, and that kicked off my spiritual journey. And she talks about, how your parents were just doing the best they could. And, I read the whole book and it really resonated. And it gave me something to hold on to, right? I was able to explore that deeper purpose. But I still thought, I'm a skeptic because that's what I needed to survive my whole life, because there was con artists and shady people in every corner. And I thought, okay, well, this is all great, but what does she know? And, she's never been through like what I'm going through, until I read the very back of the book where she shared her story of having breast cancer. And I thought, what? She had been through it. So then it connected. I was like, health, spirituality, purpose, meaning. I get it. Right. And so that's what really, really forged my path onward. And then from there, I was able to, I read all the books at that point. I did all the personal growth. I started, after my education, working with clients. Actually, before I even finished, I was working with some clients and making some money. And I took some odd jobs here and there, doing like random promotions and just whatever I could to get money. And then when I had enough, I found a therapist that would work on a sliding scale. So I paid him $35 a visit to try to help me. And that took me so far, but not where I wanted to go. So then I started seeking out coaches. And to this day, I still work with coaches. I think if you're going to coach, you have to have a coach.
I believe that too.
Because we all have blind spots. So all of the above.
Okay. My next question is about those lumps. I want to go, did you ever figure out what that was? Was it breast cancer? Was it not? And how did you get through that?
Yeah. So I did find out, I was actually diagnosed with just fibrous cyst in both of my breast, which they don't really fully understand the extent of all of the causes. Stress is a huge one. Caffeine is another one.
Which you were doing both. You were having caffeine and you were stressed.
Totally, 100%. Yeah, I thought coffee was good for me. It's an antioxidant. Like I didn't know what I was doing. So that's what it ended up being. And I was able to correct those with just diet and
amazing
lifestyle factors alone, which years later, I remember just being brought to my knees in gratitude. Gratitude is another thing, by the way, that I live and die by. But I remember I answered the phone one day. My mom called and she had just been diagnosed with breast cancer. And so I thought, whoa, I just felt like I had just dodged a speeding bullet. But no, mine were fine, turned out to be fibrous. But
it was the perfect scare for you because that's what brought you to that surrender place.
Yeah, for sure.
If somebody's listening right now and they're in their own personal rock bottom, maybe they're with the pills in the shower, the same thing, whatever their personal rock bottom is to them. And if you were to give them 3 pieces of advice on how they can start shifting out of that and creating everything from nothing, what would you tell them?
Yeah. So let me just say that I don't give advice anymore because I've been a coach and been in this field long enough to know that advice is what people ask for when they already know what to do and just don't want to do it. Okay. So I don't want to give advice. What I do want to say is that you have everything that you need inside of you. And trust me when I say that that is true. If you need help and you need guidance, by all means, go to the sages on a mountain, seek out the gurus, find the experts, listen to this podcast. But I believe that you have everything that you need inside of you. I believe that you're here for a reason. There are no extra humans. And if you weren't meant to be here and you weren't meant to go through these things, then make no mistake, you wouldn't be here. Yeah. So the fact that you're going through this is for a higher purpose. And it is within these struggles that we find our true strength, that we really understand our gifts and that we realize what we're truly made of. And I think if we focus on that and you can focus on the goodness in those moments. So for example, for me, growing up poor taught me to be really resourceful because if clothing tore, you learned how to sew because you couldn't buy another one. And so in my business now and in my life, that has served me well. I'm always like, I'm the resourceful one. How do we fix it? How do we get through? So start to explore what you've learned through those adversities and look how you can leverage them and turn them into your advantages because I assure you that's what you're meant to do.
I love that. Tell us about transformational nutrition and what that stands for, what that means, and if people are interested, how do they find it?
Yeah, so happy to. So transformational nutrition is currently the only scientific study of health and human wellness on the biological, spiritual, and psychological areas of life. So it's currently the only science that's backed by over 1,400 studies that focuses on all three of those areas for permanent change and true transformation. So as I mentioned before, for the people that are like, if I could just walk out the door and start over, this is the path to doing that. And I still practice this every single day. Every single day in my journal, I have a wellness journal and a planner. I write down, what am I doing physically? What am I doing mentally? What am I doing spiritually to feed myself? So what we really seek to do with transformational nutrition is help people understand what they're really hungry for so they can start to fill those voids. Because as you talked about earlier, disease isn't just caused by food and lifestyle. It's caused by past trauma. It's caused by your beliefs. It's caused by your disconnection from others, from yourself, from something bigger than you. And so what we're trying to do is put together all those pieces to really feed those hungers. And so we certify coaches in that area of transformational nutrition, and then they choose specialties from there. So if they want to be a diabetes coach and apply these principles to that, they can. They can specialize in cancer, holistic health, autoimmune disease, digestive health, and a bunch of others as well. Weight loss is another one, so that they can really have the impact that they want to have on the world that relates to their own personal story and mission.
I love that. So for those of you that have asked me, because many people have reached out to me before, like, how do you get started in fitness or nutrition or all that? That's a great way. It's a great way to start there.
Yeah. And we take you from knowing nothing. You can be just like I was. And again, I built this from my own personal struggle, right? Like everything I tried to find and wanted to find and couldn't, I built into it. So it starts at the basics with, biology and anatomy. Yep. Really builds you up everything you need to know, including how to coach people, because being an expert in coaching is totally different. So we teach you how to coach people and also how to build a business. Because I built that business before I started the Institute. So if you want to write a best-selling book, if you want to create supplements, if you want to have your own product or program or podcast like Natalie, then we teach you how to do all of that with a tremendous faculty of people like Dave Asprey and JJ Virgin and Sean Stevenson and the Wellness Mama and so many others that have also been students of our school.
Yeah. I just realized now that you're saying this, I think I taught something on there, because I'm now remembering when you said Sean Stevenson and you.
You and Sean. So Sean was a student. He came through ITN and got his certification and then went on to get his master's with us, which was really cool.
Got it.
Yeah, and really wanted to give back to his audience through this.
Okay. So that's what that was. Yes, I remember you coordinating an interview
with you. Yeah.
That's right. I remember now. So awesome. So awesome. Well, where can people find that school? Where can they sign up for that? What's the website? And then where are you on social?
Sure. So the school is just transformationalnutrition.com. So you can go check it out there. We have a free guide. If you want to know what kind of coach you would be best at being, you can go to transformationalnutrition.com/quiz and take this really fun quiz. Yeah, it's great. And it tells you what kind of coach that you are, which is always fun to learn about ourselves. And then me, I'm on social media at I am Cynthia Garcia.
I love it. Thank you so much, Cynthia.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Natalie. It's always great to sit down and talk with like minds who are trying to get the bigger message out in the world.
Love it. Thanks for leveling up with us today. Please share this episode if you found it helpful so others can join in. And don't forget to hit that subscribe so you don't miss out on future shows. And if you would leave me a 5-star review, I appreciate those so much. I read all of them, and it's how I know that I'm giving you information that you find valuable. And come interact with me over on Instagram at NatalieJillFit. I read all the direct messages and comments over there. Make it a great day, creating everything from nothing.